there's another element of scandal in Dr. Fauci's emails. He received in March an email saying that China's lying about the number of deaths, that this is a huge threat to our country, COVID-19 is. He replied that this email was too long to read, and this comes at a time that he's sending emails about how he looks like Brad Pitt in his SNL portrayal, sending emails about his face being on donuts. So he has time for, I guess, megalomaniac-like inflation, but no time to read about COVID coming to our shores.
It breaks my brain to try to figure out where Dr. Fauci really was on these issues, because we don't know. The emails are starting to show us something potentially that we also didn't know at the time. And so the former Secretary of State, I think, makes such an important point, Mike Pompeo, when he says, we need to know what Dr. Fauci knew, because the time mattered that he was saying these things. What he was saying was directly affecting what the rest of us were doing, whether it was mask wearing, as Sean Duffy just pointed out. My big thing is I think we're underestimating his strategic ability here. I really do. I mean, I don't want to make him out to be a mad scientist, but he is a scientist. And it sounds a little crazy at times what he's saying, but you know, okay, so China would never kill its own people. Of course it would. Tiananmen Square, I mean, it's a communist nation. I won't even get into that. But that's not what anybody's pointing a finger to. Sean, you're right about this. What people are pointing a finger to is whether or not that lab mishandled this to the point where it killed so many people around the world. And should they be allowed to operate labs like that without our eyes on that?
Right.
Like, how do we better? They got 75 labs, General Keane has told me. Some of them weaponized their biotech products. And this lab was known to do this, according to General Keane.
Exactly.
So we need eyes on, we need conversations, we need to be on the ground. He's kind of flying a false flag. He's making us think, oh, we're making China think he's defending. Oh, China would never hurt its own people. Yeah, no one said that China hurt their own people on purpose. What they did say was they mishandled things in that lab potentially. Let's go take a closer look. So he is shell game. Don't look over there, look over here.
Right.
It's
right.
pretty strategic.
Well, and we know why he was doing that, because he gave money to that lab. And while President Trump is saying, look at the lab, there's evidence here, he's emailing with a Chinese health official saying, we're going to get through this together. Don't worry. It is a huge deal.
We don't know how the money was used. We do know, and Sean, you can probably speak to this too, on how, nonprofits will use certain things.
Yeah.
Joey Jones was talking to me about this. How he couldn't necessarily trace the dollars, but if you put enough money on the table, maybe there might be a little play in that, and maybe some expectation for that. We don't know. We weren't there for that transaction.
And Emily, there needs to be an investigation into this, hugely, because right after Dr. Fauci stood at that White House podium, lied to the nation, said this originated naturally, guess what? He gets an email from the nonprofit that gave the money to the Wuhan lab, thanking him for using his respected voice to maybe cover up the fact that it started in a lab.
I mean, the conflict of interest here is absolutely overwhelming. And I think, unfortunately, no investigation will likely uncover the kind of results we can depend on.
Agreed.
To the points that you were bringing up earlier, the lack of transparency and, frankly, the commitment to total secrecy on the part of the Chinese government. I think that we have to point out for viewers, this is 3,200 emails in less than 6 months.
It's a trove.
The sheer volume of this is so huge. And yet in there, what's interesting as well is what Fauci did and did not do with the information. So first of all, we know, for example, and you guys know I keep harping on this, that United States scientists brought up their concerns as far back as 2018 with this lab's handling of the virus, specifically their disregard for safety and management in combination with the threat to public health of this virus. Well, I have to point out that part of their recommendations for actions was actually increasing funding to the lab in those areas to address this, for the safety of all of mankind, to address that. So back to your point, well, what was the money used for? And so the fact that Fauci, for example, Mark Meadows, former chief of staff, came out recently and said, that's interesting because Dr. Fauci told us nothing about his lab leak emails back and forth. He didn't share any of that with us. So again, this is against the backdrop of Fauci knowing that U.S. scientists had raised concerns for years because it wasn't classified. He was emailing about it, and yet he didn't divulge that information to an administration that deserved his transparency. And you talk about, kind of gauging his reactions. And I just note, final point real quick, that the the response Dr. Fauci made to the head of the NIH having a subject line that said conspiracy theory takes off with an article connected to those of us who were rightly asking questions about the origination, well, that response was redacted. So it remains to be seen how actually the good doctor responded.
That is a great point. And look, the media was caught with egg on its face. They dismissed the Wuhan lab theory. They were wrong to dismiss that. And now here they are again, looking at the Fauci emails and saying nothing to see here.
Yeah, they still have egg on their face. Go do your job.
Yes.
Go
Now,
do your jobs.
there's-
Investigate. Dig deeper. Ask questions. And who cares if Twitter puts stickers on our accounts for asking
Right,
questions?
right.
Wear it as a badge of honor.
Right. And
Go do your job.
Right. And they're saying these emails show a window into the life of a health official under fire. No, they're a window into the duplicity of America's top health official.